Welcome to the GFFA Grain Club Forum on the deforestation regulation. We all agree that we should reduce deforestation on a global scale as much as possible. And I think we would also all agree that the European Union, with passing this new regulation, will contribute to this, and that is a very welcome endeavor. Now, what the administrative challenges this brings with it, that is something that we will take a look at today, administrative and practical implications. The Grain Club Association members organized today's event, and they are focused on oilseeds in particular. And I would like to ask Ms. Jana Kleinschmidt from Lengefeld to join me on the stage. There are a lot of open questions when it comes to implementing this regulation, and we are waiting for answers on that. So if there are suggestions and proposals from the EU Commission, if we propose something, they often tell us that they already have plans and we are just supposed to implement them. So if I'm reading between the lines here, you're basically saying that you should get the producers, the businesses on board and have them join that process. Now we are going to have a couple of political stakeholders joining me here on the stage. Dr. Thomas Waldorf is going to join us from the Directorate General 5, Forestry, Sustainability and Bioeconomy at the Federal Ministry of Agriculture. For one, existing regulation was not sufficient to protect forests. Regulations that were in force in the past were not really up to the task to achieve that. So that is something that we, of course, have kept in mind when we were looking at this regulation, because the science is pretty clear. Achieving the Paris Agreement, achieving our climate goals, achieving our goals to protect biodiversity is not possible without protecting our forests, which means that this is an immediate issue that we have to tackle. And secondly, we have heard a lot of feedback that in Germany we cannot do this alone, that we need an EU-wide regulation in order to make sure that we have a level playing field in terms of competitiveness in Europe as well. That is Dr. Christian Grütters. Welcome to the stage. And Mr. Grütters is head of the Verevis LLC, who is a subsidiary of the Association of Cooperatives, and he is Director of Services and Sustainability at Agravis. He's been working on these issues for a couple of years now.
I believe everybody shares the overarching objective, which is to reduce or avoid deforestation and forest degradation, something which we have been engaged for many years, by the way. We closely cooperate with a cooperative in the south of Brazil, where we talk about small holders that would be in the north of Brazil. And for many years, too, we do buy and import deforestation-free products. And we have been able to do so without this entire rule book and bureaucracy, which will be introduced by this regulation, and which would have to be introduced a very short notice by the end of this year, December 24. It would have to be put into place, and this is really extremely short notice, because we don't have a system yet in place which can be used or which will be available for us to make sense and so that we can actually implement the regulation. The regulation imposes enormous requirements concerning traceability, that is, traceability across the entire chain. And this is really a challenge for us, because we have to provide geolocation data. But the thing is, we don't even have the right formats yet or templates. The Union, Brussels is working on that. got together with industry, but now, it's the end of January soon, and so time is of the essence. And any company, doing something similar and have to know what it means. 9 months, we are now the first quarter and only 9 months left. This is extremely unrealistic. Let's take a 40,000 tons vessel, and which then needs to be cleared or unloaded, and let's take it all the way to the port. Then we are talking about more than 10 to 15,000 data sets which have to be entered and processed. At the same time, you have a lot of mixing of products that makes it even more difficult. So it's even much more than the 10 or 15,000 data sets. There's like a multiplier because, as I said, there's the mixing process. The products are stored in different warehouses, might be mixed with other products, so they are unloaded from the ship, then they are loaded onto a lorry. And so, I mean, how is this supposed to work? And such ports tend to be extremely busy, and I don't see how these requirements can be complied with. And we only account for 10% of the soy market, but we're really talking about a very tight infrastructure already. So how likely or how realistic is it that we will get such a corridor of the clearance to have our products cleared and released for free circulation? And at the same time, it will also cost a lot of money, setting up the kind of infrastructure which would be needed. And that's why I said what you quoted earlier, and, talking as a company and a producer, and, given the huge demand for commodities, I do wonder, is it really worth it going through all this hassle and having all this red tape for 10% of our turnover? Is it really worth it? And I don't see how the regulation will be helpful in any way. And as we all know, the products will always go there where they don't face many hurdles. That's a fact. And so it's also a matter of costs and benefits. Well, we are fully aware of all these challenges. And we also have some points of criticism, certainly, on the regulation and or some of the requirements contained in the regulation, and also the preparations haven't been quite satisfactory. I fully share that view, and especially the database is not quite adequate yet. I'm just from the ministry. I'm not a policymaker or politician, just to make that clear. So we are not happy about everything. And at the executive level, that is the minister level, in fact, we have been promised by the Commission, by Brussels, that there will be improvements. So that's what they told our minister. So I do hope that we will see improvements still this first quarter 24, and then the system will be tested for its functionality. Does it really work? Will it work? Because what we also hear again and again, how can it be that you have to enter like 13,000, I believe you said, 30,000 data manually? How can that be? I mean, here I fully hear what you are saying and share your concerns. And there's also a competent authority in Germany which needs to check everything. And so if they'd have to do this again manually or on paper, this will not work. But I would have an even better proposal. We have the Supply Chain Act in Germany. And, well, I'm only talking about soy and palm oil, and talking about 20% altogether, world market. Brazil, even less, So what we need for the European market can already be achieved from agricultural land which was used before the cut-off date. So, as I said, we already have regulations in place in Germany, or provisions. We have the Supply Chain Act, where we have to provide a lot of evidence and proof. And now there is this really absurd requirement of having to enter thousands of billions of data. I would like to welcome Ms. Rukaya Rafik from Indonesia. She represents the Smallholders Association from Indonesia, the Palm Oil Forum for Smallholder Farmers.
Terima kasih Sasha untuk memberikan waktu dan kesempatan bagi saya untuk berbagi mengenai petani swadaya dan EUDR di Indonesia. Pada sisi positifnya, EUDR banyak sekali mendorong inisiatif dan diskusi-diskusi di Indonesia untuk memastikan bahwa produk kelapa sawit di Indonesia memenuhi semua standar EUDR. Namun diskusi-diskusi tersebut hanya berkutat kepada traceability dan legality. Diskusi tidak mengarah kepada bagaimana menjawab persoalan-persoalan mendasar kepada petani swadaya, terutama terkait dengan harga, pengetahuan, dan akses. Karena no deforestasi itu adalah berangkat dari persoalan pendapatan yang rendah oleh petani. Dan semoga teman-teman yang ada di EU tidak dapat memastikan bahwa petani swadaya memberikan supply base kepada EU. Karena no deforestasi itu bukan hanya hak daripada EU, tetapi juga menjadi hak bagi petani dan seluruh masyarakat Indonesia. Terima kasih.
And that's a clear message about their concern that smallholders will be removed, so to say, from the supply chains once this regulation enters into force. Now we want to talk about a multi-actor partnership and their point of view. Sascha Tischer is going to join us. Sascha Tischer is committed to protecting the environment and communities in tropical regions. He's traveled to 60 countries worldwide, and he joined the Sustainable Agriculture Network in 2016 and is there network relationships responsible, and is also working for the head of FONAP, the Forum of Sustainable Agriculture, and they are working with a variety of projects. And Mr. Tischler says that there are huge challenges for smaller market participants and smallholders, and does not think that this regulation is going to stop deforestation. Thanks for joining us, Mr. Tischer. We also see that in recent years in Indonesia and in other countries there was deforestation, with large companies there and large producers being active in deforestation. But while that is the case, they clearly reduced deforestation rates. Smallholders will almost certainly be cut off from international supply chains and the trade flow to Europe, maybe to the United States as well. The majority of the palm oil, I think 86% or maybe even 90% that we are using in the EU comes from RSDO and other standardized sources. When talking to people in Asia in particular, you realize that they are changing their approach. They are telling us that, yes, we are supposed to meet your standards, but it is a growing market. There's a market growing in Bangladesh and China, in other countries that to a certain extent are closer to standardization in the EU, others less so. So they tell us that they'll still be able to sell their products. And I mean, we've even heard that in a German news program, the Tagesschau, there was a representative from Malaysia who said, very self-confident, said that, it's great that you are working towards this. We don't want to have deforestation either, but if you are that strict, we are going to find other buyers for our products. Now, as you just mentioned, there's just an indirect requirement to comply. Thank you for pointing that out. And with that, I would like to ask Carole Alarson to join us on the stage.
Frau Alarson hat Abschlüsse in
Alarson holds a master's in tropical forestry from the TU in Dresden, and of course she has an environmental management bachelor's at the University of Sao Paulo, and has 15 years of experience working in the Amazon region. And starting in 2022, she's become advocacy coordinator for the Brazilian Coalition for Climate, Forest and Agriculture, and you're going to share the Brazilian point of view with us today.
We see the UDR as a significant milestone in combating deforestation within the commodity supply chain. Nevertheless, the unilateral compliance requirement that were established and the way of monitoring above all have left many policymakers as well as companies in Brazil in a lot of confusion. It's not possible to talk about UDR and not understand what are the real causes of deforestation in Brazil and how to tackle it. UDR is actually an opportunity for sustainable agriculture in Brazil. From this process, what we understand that it will be essential to move forward with the UDR implementation is to have multi-sector dialogue for the implementation of national solutions that will attend UDR or UK or China or United States. We need a national solution to our deforestation problems that will attend the many demands outside. Also, one thing that is important finally to highlight is that the success of this UDR implementation also lands in cooperative efforts and dialogue with producer countries, which in all the process of designing it and coming to the final term was not been done. And we hope that now from this transition and implementation phase, these consumer country partnerships could offer a pathway to build a consensus and solutions out of it. It's not going to be easy, but I think it's better late than never.
We are all committed to the objective of reducing deforestation, and we are happy to see a new framework because other measures in the past failed to produce the desired results. Coming back to the regulation on the overall objective, let me draw your attention to some of the shortages we have identified, and that is a lack of communication with the producer markets. And there's good reason why 14 governments sent a letter to the European Commission saying that this regulation will have such an impact on their markets and that they haven't even been consulted. And looking at communication now and whether it works now, and there is even an article now, I believe, in the regulation providing for such cooperation or dialogue. All I'm hearing is that Indonesia and Malaysia, what they are saying is, well, it's all very well, but the timing, 30th of December 24, this is completely unrealistic. Nobody asked us about our challenges, geolocation. Dr. Baldorf said it earlier. This is one point, but this is, especially at the beginning, this will be crucial, and it's also very costly. It will cost a lot of money, and the evidence of origin, or the proof of origin and legality, the proof of legality, this is also a big issue for many countries. And this is where everybody's saying we won't be able to have it up and running by the end of this year.
We do share the same goal. Deforestation has to stop, and we do want to have products from deforestation-free areas. So I sometimes, seem to think that between the lines you're insinuating that we don't want that. But I'm not sure if you can be serious about suggesting that German businesses, have just to get to work for half a year, and it's a bit decadent, I think, to say that, to just, get to work. It doesn't work like that, and there are two reasons why it doesn't work like that. And the first is that when we talk about database and connectivity, that doesn't work yet, and then we talk about the amount of data. So if you have 50,000 tons on a cargo, on a ocean freighter, and if that is something that we import, we have 10 to 15,000 data points on one ship, one cargo ship. And of course, you have mixing taking place throughout the entire supply chain. That means that this is by a factor of, however complex the logistics chain is. So it might be 30 to 40,000 data points per cargo ship. So if you're suggesting that someone just has to sit down and enter that into a system and geolocation data, that's a very long number. So I think the idea to just do it like that, I don't think that that's going to work. And secondly, we are working with a Coamo, that's about 30,000 farmers in the south of Brazil, a cooperative, and we have built a geolocation system with them, looking at satellite imagery before and after. Then we did a risk analysis. But it took us 20 years to establish that. And this cooperative with a lot of businesses and the buyers of these products, they invested a lot of money in that. And that took 20 years, not 20 months. And currently, we're just supposed to be able to do it somehow. And let me add that Germany and France, they very much pushed for this regulation. They were very motivated. And at the same time, just last week, we stated that we are going to get a program that is supposed to reduce red tape in Germany. That's what politicians said last week. So we didn't even talk about EUDR applying to the entirety of Europe as well. It's not just Indonesia or Brazil. It also applies to producers in the EU. But that aside, we expect people in the Black Forest in Germany to also enter that data into the system. And now they're saying they want to do away with red tape, less administrative paperwork. I don't know how that works. I mean, CSRD, CSDD, the Supply Chain Due Diligence Act, and so much more. That's a lot of red tape, and that is added to the work. So there are a lot of ideas, but the implementation is not very good. What is the important thing, the key factor for EUDR to become a success, to achieve its goal? Mr. Fischer, what do you think? In one sentence, please. We need more time. There's even just that's 2 words. That's fantastic. So, yeah, I think it has to be ambitious. Yes, we are behind schedule, but it's important. It's a huge issue, something that the EU has developed and proposed quite quickly. But looking at smallholders, in Indonesia and in other countries, we do need more time.
Well, I have to agree with the transition time as well, that we have also dialogue established between producer and importer countries. And more than anything, that UDR has to understand what are local realities, the causes of deforestation, and to leverage in local policies and local solutions that have already been implemented. Otherwise, there is no solution that fits for all. So every country we have things different, contexts that are different, and proportions that are very different. So I think I would sum up with these 3. We need more time, but we also need dialogue and comprehension of what's really happening on the ground.
we need to perceive EUDR as an opportunity. Why do I think we need that? From the ministry, federal ministry, from the ministry ultimately responsible for the EUDR in Germany, there are a couple of things that we think are important. We have to support businesses to be able to implement the regulation. We need to establish a system that checks the compliance with the EUDR, and we need to look at what we've achieved. We have a very ambitious regulation. We have a regulation that can be implemented and can be complied with, and that will move things forward in production countries. So we want to support that regulation. And we can't do that alone. So as those politically responsible, we can't do this alone. We need civil society, we need producers, which is why it is so important. And I was delighted to be present at the opening of the GFFA. And one of the first sentences that I heard was that supply chains have to become future-proof. Well, yes, we have to future-proof supply chains, and the only way to do that is with more time. We need more time. I think the time frame here is too ambitious, so we have to keep the supply chains going for now. I think you're not future-proofing them, but just keeping them going. We have to do away with red tape, reduce duplicate regulations in the due diligence supply chain, for example, and we have to recognize certain supply chain systems where we are not fixated on certain IT systems. We need to use established IT systems that use mass or batch balancing. So there are, of course, issues with that, but there are well-made systems like RSPO. That's systems that you might have to take into consideration as well. I think that helps us much more than introducing this red tape monstrum. What do you think? We just launched into GFFA 24. What about next year's GFFA? What is the situation going to look like next year? Well, I hope we will have had a lot of time for dialogue. We'll better understand what legislation actually does, what the impact is, because I think if you want to achieve something with legislation, you have to understand what the impact is going to be.